Welcome back after the break. You're watching Indus News and I'm Fiza Jamal with our main stories in detail. 19 government soldiers have been killed in an alleged Al-Qaeda attack on an army base in Yemen's southern Abyan province. Security officials claim Al-Qaeda gunmen stormed into the Al-Mahfad base and remained inside for hours before military reinforcements arrived. They say the attackers were later killed while wounded soldiers were airlifted out by coalition forces. Al-Qaeda has not claimed responsibility for the attack so far. This comes just a day after a missile attack by Houthi rebels and an unknown suicide bomber killed over 50 in Aden. Russia has invited United States and NATO to declare a mutual freeze on the deployment of short and intermediate range missiles. This comes as Washington gears up to officially withdraw from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty today. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov says the Kremlin is not taking the agreement off the table. Earlier, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton confirmed the United States will today withdraw from the INF Treaty. Bolton says the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty between United States and Russia is also unlikely to be extended. Moscow and Washington have repeatedly accused each other of INF Treaty violations. They signed the INF Treaty in 1987 to curb the Cold War arms race. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the world will lose a break on nuclear war with the end of Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. United States and Russia have failed to agree on how to keep it alive. The INF Treaty was an arms control agreement between United States and then the Soviet Union. Russia says United States is looking for a pretext for a large-scale military clash in the Persian Gulf. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says aggressive United States rhetoric against Iran aims to trigger an active conflict. In a press conference, Zakharova criticized Washington's move to create a naval mission in the Strait of Hormuz. Zakharova also took an aim at Britain, saying it wants to manipulate information in cyberspace for military and political purposes. Commenting on recently imposed British curbs on the Russian media, she accused London of taking its anti-Kremlin policies to new heights. Beijing says United States' decision to impose more tariffs on Chinese exports is neither a constructive nor a correct way to resolve their trade problems. This comes after President Donald Trump announced an extra 10% tariff on $300 billion worth of Chinese products. Speaking in Thailand, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the higher tariffs are a step in the wrong direction. The punitive levy is in addition to the 25% duty imposed last year. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank say the trade war between the world's top two economies has slowed global economic growth. South Korea says it will drop Japan from its list of favored trade partners, mirroring a decision taken by Tokyo earlier today. The move has rattled the electronics industry because it threatens the global microchip supply chain. South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa criticized Japan's decision at the ASEAN summit in Bangkok. Seoul has summoned the Japanese ambassador to protest against Tokyo's latest export curbs. Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Hyun-chung has called Japan's move a public humiliation. South Korean makers of display panels and memory chips stand to be worst hit by Tokyo's measures. Tensions escalated after a South Korean court ordered Japanese firms to pay compensation for using forced Korean labor between 1910 and 1945. And also, South Korea claims North Korea has fired 2 more missiles into the East China Sea, the second such test launched this week. Seoul's Director of National Security, Chung Yoo-young, said the projectiles appear to be a new short-range ballistic missile. Chung urged Pyongyang to halt the tests, saying they undermine efforts to ease military tensions on the Korean peninsula. Britain, France and Germany have urged North Korea to take steps to complete denuclearization.
We're concerned by the launches of ballistic missiles by North Korea in the past few days. We reiterate our condemnation of such launches, which are violations of UN Security Council resolutions. We urge North Korea to take concrete steps towards its complete, verifiable and irreversible denuclearization, and to engage in meaningful negotiations with the United States as agreed between President Trump and Kim Jong-un on 30 June.
And Pyongyang says the missile tests are a warning to South Korea and the United States against holding joint military drills in the East China Sea next week. Moving on, the Syrian government has agreed to a truce in the northwestern region of Idlib. State media says the ceasefire is conditional on the implementation of a buffer zone agreed by Turkey and Russia last year. The announcement came at the opening of the 13th round of international talks to resolve the war in Astana, Kazakhstan. Iran, Turkey and Russia, with representatives of the Syrian government and opposition, are taking part. Russian envoy to Syria Alexander Lavrentiev has welcomed the move and says rebels should now honor previous peace agreements. Idlib is the last major rebel bastion in Syria after 8 years of war. And now in Sudan, at least 4 people have been shot dead at a protest rally in the city of Omdurman. They were demonstrating after protest leaders called for a 1 million-person march in response to the killing of 4 students earlier this week. A top Sudanese general held a paramilitary force responsible for the students' deaths. General Jamal Umar says members of the Rapid Support Forces guarding a bank opened fire at protesters out of fear. State media says the personnel responsible for the attack have been sacked and handed over to the authorities for trial. In a related story, Sudan's military council has dismissed and arrested 9 soldiers from the Rapid Support Forces in connection with the recent killings of students. The Rapid Support Forces work under the ruling military council. At least 4 children were killed at a protest rally in Al Obeid earlier this week after security forces stormed in to disperse the demonstration. Spokesman Lieutenant General Shams al-Din Kabashi said the governor and security council of the state will be held accountable for the killings. The arrests come a day after 4 more people were shot dead during a protest rally for the children in the city of Omdurman. Egypt says it is committed to a 2-state solution in Palestine with East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met U.S. President Trump's advisor Jared Kushner in Cairo to discuss Washington's plans for Israeli-Palestinian peace. The U.S. envoy is on a regional tour to gain support for the peace plan to end the Israel-Palestine conflict through investments, but Palestine has already rejected the plan. And Saudi Arabia has lifted a long-standing ban on women traveling abroad without a male guardian. Saudi women will now be able to obtain passports without permission from a male relative. A cabinet decree said passports will be granted to any Saudi national who apply. The new regulation allows women over the age of 21 to travel overseas. Saudi women have long required permission from their male guardians to marry, renew their passports, and leave the country. The Saudi ambassador to the United States, Rima Bandar Al Saud, says the kingdom will also amend labor and civil laws to elevate the status of women. United States President Trump says he stands by his offer to mediate the Kashmir dispute between Pakistan and India. Calling Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan a fantastic person, Trump said it was up to India's Narendra Modi to take the next step. Trump said he spoke frankly over the proposal with Khan in Washington and Modi at the G20 summit. He said both leaders can get along very well. United States President first publicly made the offer during his meeting with Prime Minister Khan last month, saying Modi had asked him to mediate the Kashmir dispute. Modi, however, backtracked from the statement after coming under fire in India over his request for Trump's mediation. Thousands of people have been evacuated from a British town after part of a dam wall collapsed in floods. Engineers are pumping water from Todbrook Reservoir amid fears it could burst and swamp Whaley Bridge in Derbyshire. Police told more than 6,000 residents to leave the area with their pets and medical supplies. United Kingdom Environment Agency also issued a life-threatening flood warning for the River Goyt below the reservoir. This came after heavy rain in the last couple of days led to flash floods across northern England. Most roads and railways have also been blocked by the flooding. European Union nations will vote today to choose a consensus candidate to head the International Monetary Fund. Britain did not field a candidate because it could not come up with a name on time. Earlier, European Union members extended Thursday's deadline so Britain can put forward its candidate. Dutch Jeroen Dijsselbloem, Spain's Nadia Calvino, Finland's Olli Rehn, and Bulgaria's Kristalina Georgieva are the declared candidates. Portuguese Mario Centeno pulled out of the race, adding he will be available for a compromise solution. The post goes to a European by convention while an American heads the World Bank. Former chief Christine Lagarde quit after she was tapped to head the European Central Bank. The IMF says any of its 189 members can nominate a candidate between July the 29th and September the 6th. After the deadline, the board will announce its shortlisted candidates of up to 3 names. Russia has ordered police to investigate whether arsonists set wildfires to conceal illegal logging activity in Siberia. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has ordered a criminal case to be opened over the recent blazes. Russia's investigative committee says it is probing officials over suspected negligence in fighting fires. The wildfires have consumed 3 million hectares of Siberian forest. Over 2,700 firefighters are trying to put out the flames. The Defense Ministry says it has sent 20 aircraft to the Krasnoyarsk region, worst affected by the blaze. And now we'll take a break, but don't go anywhere because coming up next in the Bulletin, is Portugal is trying to attract refugees. First female jockey to win while wearing a hijab. Welcome back after the break. Now, as promised, our main stories in detail will continue. The mayor of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, has succumbed to wounds after an Al-Shabaab suicide attack at his office last week. The attack also claimed the lives of 6 others. Mayor Abdulrahman Omar Usman was airlifted to Qatar for treatment after the July 24th attack. He was a Briton who returned to help rebuild his war-torn country after serving as a Labour Party councillor. Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi said Omar Usman sacrificed his life for the country's people. The president has declared 3 days of mourning for the mayor, ordering flags to be flown at half-mast. The Mozambique government and the opposition Renamo movement have signed an agreement to end decades of hostilities in the South African country. The deal comes 2.5 months before general elections. In 2013, Mozambique's national resistance movement, Renamo, declared the end of a 1992 peace deal after the military raided a bush camp. Clashes then erupted between government forces and Renamo soldiers from 2013 to 2016. The agreement between President Philippe Nyusi and Renamo leader Osufo Momade has ended a long negotiation process. Nyusi said the agreement opens a new era in which no Mozambican should use weapons to resolve conflicts. more than 5,200 Renamo fighters are expected to surrender their weapons to the government. The Democratic Republic of Congo has struggled to contain an Ebola outbreak for the past 12 months. Over 1,800 people have already died due to the disease. More in this report.
The DRC is currently dealing with over 2,600 Ebola cases. 3 out of 10 patients are children.
Colleagues and communities on the ground are fighting the outbreak tirelessly. But we need desperately international community to back us up.
On Thursday, Rwanda sealed its border with the city of Goma for 8 hours, fearing that the outbreak would spill over across the border. The World Health Organization has asked local communities to put up a united front against the epidemic.
I think that after over 1,800 deaths, it is extremely important that people look at reality. Today, if we have been able to make progress in Butembo and Katwa, it is because the population has taken ownership of the answer. People who have lost family members will never say that Ebola does not exist here.
The World Health Organization says Goma could become a gateway for Ebola to spread to the rest of the world. In late July, the WHO also declared the epidemic a public health emergency of international concern. This is a rare designation used only for the gravest outbreak.
Speaking of deadly outbreaks in Bangladesh, the death toll from a dengue outbreak has risen to 50 in the past 30 days. The health department says over 1,400 people have been diagnosed with dengue in the past 24 hours. The report says nearly 300 people a day were hospitalized in July. Almost 50 people have died of the disease in July alone. American artist Diana Weimar has found a novel way to record President Trump's most outlandish comments. The artist sews Trump's quotes onto old garments, including doilies and baby bibs. This report has more.
Diana Weimar has found a creative way of dealing with what she calls madness. But the American artist initially started stitching Donald Trump's quotes into old garments on her own. But she quickly realized she couldn't keep up with the rate at which Trump delivers outrageous statements.
I went from making 100% of them to maybe eventually I will be making, a fraction of them. I try to do a daily feed, so if Trump says something today, I'll stitch it and post it tomorrow. And then everyone else comes in behind me with quotes from 30 years ago to 30 days ago, whatever strikes them and whatever they want to report.
Weimar then started a project, and the result is a 900-strong collection of colorful needlework. Much of her work is on display at an exhibition in New York City.
Seeing it all together is actually kind of almost more of a horror show. And I do think it makes an impact, or I hope that it would make an impact. Because you're seeing what we are putting out there as a nation, and it's devastating in a lot of ways, right?
Weimar wants to collect 2,020 pieces by the 2020 presidential election. She hopes her work will influence voters.
Unlike many of its European neighbors, Portugal is currently trying to attract refugees. The country encourages immigration to boost its workforce and combat a dwindling population. This report has the details.
A victim of religious persecution, Maury Camara had to flee his home in Guinea. In 2017, he travelled to Libya. After 4 attempts travelling in a little dinghy, he made it to Europe and eventually to this refugee centre.
Everyone I've met in Portugal has been nice. When you're in a place where you're respected, where people treat you with dignity, where people start to think of you as a brother or sister, that's the best thing ever.
Portugal is an exception in Europe. They welcome refugees to combat a shortage of manual workers and a dwindling population. Portugal has become home to almost 2,000 refugees since 2015.
It's good for our country's economy and for population growth. Companies themselves are asking for migrants now because they help the local economy, whether it's in factories or farming.
In Portugal, almost half of the refugees have found jobs. Deborah makes watch parts in the city of Fundão. A year ago, she fled Nigeria and was saved in the Mediterranean by the humanitarian ship Aquarius.
Life is good because now I have house, I'm working, I eat well. Anything I like, I can eat now. So I'm very happy.
Deborah is coming to the end of the European programme that helps refugees to become self-sufficient in their host country.
In the world of business, stock markets across Europe and Asia have slumped after US President Donald Trump slapped fresh punitive tariffs on China. In early European trading, Paris's CAC and the DAX in Frankfurt both shed over 2.5%. London's FTSE 100 also lost 2% in value. The slump in Europe mirrored Asian markets, where the Nikkei and Hang Seng closed more than 2% down. Shanghai lost more than 1%, as did the Kospi when Japan dropped South Korea as a preferential trade partner. Reacting to Trump's tariff announcement, investors have moved funds into safer assets, pushing up the price of oil. Brent futures are trading nearly 2% higher. Today, the weather in Lahore is quite pleasant, but let's see what the weather is looking like today around the globe. This is all I have for our main stories of the hour. You can choose to keep tabs on all of our social media. Just find us online by the name Indus.News.